Senator, I was surprised by your book, especially right out of the gate. You, in the first chapter, wrote about the fact that you're kind of a reluctant politician.
Well, I think certainly I enjoy public service, and I wouldn't say reluctant to serve. Certainly there are things about politics I don't enjoy, and there were times, as I talk about in the book, during my campaign where I was worried that there had no path to victory, and I was afraid, quite frankly, to do poorly as a candidate, and I was concerned about losing.
Well, there were many concerns. One of them was just the fact your wife and children and that whole family part about the fact that you did not want to be the person that you kind of looked in the mirror and saw.
Yeah, I didn't, I always worry that in my quest to do my jobs as senator, husband, and father well, I don't do any of them well because obviously we're in a job, but that takes a lot of time away from your family. But other people are in the same position. And one of the things I wanted to do in the book was to talk about that. Well, I wanted to talk about that life balance and how difficult sometimes it is and how I worry about whether my priorities are right. And I struggle with that even now, and I hope that's the impression that the book left.
Join the crowd.
Yeah, well, and that's why I wanted to share that. I hear that from people all the time in my generation. They're doing well in work, but they realize that their job is asking them to come in on a Saturday, and yet their kids have a t-ball game. How do you make that choice? How do you balance that?
Yeah.
And I think that, I'm working through that even as we speak.
So that goes along with the fact that you've been a senator, U.S. senator now for almost 2 years, and you have to pinch yourself in some regard. You are a fast rising star. I mean, even the interviews for this book, you're everywhere. Everybody wants to talk to you. So where do you see? And I'm not going to do the Veep question because everybody's asking you. But where do you see yourself down the road? You've got a 6-year commitment for this, but 10 years from now, are you going to be in politics?
I don't know. I think. The thing that's always guided me on this is, number one, you don't ever want to use the position you're in as a springboard for something else because you end up ruining yourself. That's been my experience. And the second thing I would say about it is that if I do a good job here in the Senate, not only will I have something to show for my time away from my family that they can be proud of and do a great service for my country that I owe so much to, but I'll also have other opportunities. I think like in any job, if you do a good job, you'll have other opportunities. And for me, they may be in politics, they may be outside of politics. I never thought I'd ever be in the Senate. 4 years ago, if you would have told me you're going to be a U.S. Senator, I would say that's impossible. There's no office for me to run for, and I have very little interest in federal office. But things came about and opportunities presented themselves, and I think one of the reasons why I had those opportunities is because I had a fairly good job, I think, in my time as Speaker, and so I'm guided by that now.
Yeah, but even before that, even before being Speaker of the House in Florida, and also even the City Commission in West Miami, you got your law degree. You were making pretty good money. I saw the interview you did with Greta, and you were talking about the fact that I talk about this on this show all the time. There are a lot of people, good people out there, good leaders for our country, that won't do it because of the pay. And you were concerned about whether or not with a wife and kids, you could make a better living somewhere else, whether you were doing the right thing from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, and well, hopefully we'll sell a lot of books and I have to worry about that. Look, here's the truth about it, is that there were times where I was concerned about that and continue to be. Here's the thing I would say about it, and I hope it comes across in the book. When you start adding up the costs of modern life and putting your kids in the right school, if you decide not to do public schooling, we've made a decision we want our kids to be educated in a faith-based environment, the cost of housing, it all starts to add up. And I can tell you that having to live that experience, though, has been a positive for me in the sense that it helps me identify even to this day, with the struggles that others are going through, and I realize what that means. Not that people that don't have to come from those circumstances can't, but I still live in that same neighborhood. I'm surrounded by people that get up in the morning every day and go to work, and they worry that paycheck isn't going to be there on Friday. They worry about how they're going to make ends meet at the end of the month. They worry about the fact that their house is not worth as much as it was when they paid for it. And I think that's important for policymakers to be in touch with that so that our policies can reflect those anxieties.
Speaking of your house not being worth what you thought it was, Florida got hit hard. The role of government in housing, the HAMP programs, all these various things. What's your What's your approach to the government and the housing market?
Well, number one, I think we need to understand that the best thing we can do for the housing market is to get people back to work. I think the leading cause of foreclosures is the fact that people aren't working. And if you don't have a job or you're not making enough money, you can't make your mortgage payments. So I think that's number one. And I think obviously once you do that and you get people back to work and the economy growing again, well, then housing prices begin to stabilize. But look, I've got a very situation in my own life. I mean, my next door neighbor unfortunately passed away and his house went into foreclosure, and it's reset the value of every home in the neighborhood. So today my house is upside down and all my neighbors are upside down. We didn't do anything wrong. It's just in addition to the downturn in the economy, you have these foreclosures happening. So I think these things are happening. They're hurting everybody, and it wasn't his fault, obviously, and his poor family had to go through that situation. But my point being that I think the best thing we can do for people is to give them jobs and jobs that pay well, and that means economic growth. And so what government can do is create the policies that create the conditions for economic growth.
The DREAM Act, there was the DREAM Act, and then you came up with what's being referred to as the Rubio DREAM Act, and then the president did a twist on that on Friday. What was different between your DREAM Act and these other things that are being presented to us?
Well, you mean as far as the president's policy?
That and the original DREAM Act. What did you twist from that?
Well, number one, the original DREAM Act is a special pathway to citizenship, and it also has issues regarding who qualifies and who applies, and it's just too broad. And quite frankly, I think could potentially encourage illegal immigration in the future. We take a very different approach. We basically allow kids who have been here before a certain age, have lived here for an extended period of time, graduate high school, don't have a criminal record. We allow them to get a non-immigrant visa, which means basically a student visa and to study, and thereafter a work visa. At some point, probably after 10 years under that program, they would be eligible to be petitioned for under the existing immigration system, not a special path. And so that's the way we approach the issue. The way the president's approached it is by politicizing it. Number one, he does it extra constitutionally, in essence, ignores the Constitution, ignores the Congress, and basically imposes this policy on America. Number two, he does it as an election year ploy. That means injecting partisan politics into the debate, which makes this issue harder to solve. And number three, it's a short-term solution to a long-term problem, which, and again, the way he did it is going to make it harder to arrive at a long-term solution. So what I would say, and I think in the book I talk about this, is immigration is complicated. It is not nearly as simple as either side of the debate would have you believe. On the one hand, there's a real human element to the story. You're 5 years old when your parents bring you here. You grow up here your entire life. Sometimes you don't even know you're undocumented until you try to go to college, and you graduate with with valedictorian of your class, accepted to an Ivy League school, and the U.S. wants to deport you. And it doesn't seem right to people. It seems strange to deport a valedictorian who's lived here almost all their life. On the other hand, we have an illegal immigration problem. And I think that that needs to be confronted and that needs to be addressed. And balancing those two things is important. What the president does is he doesn't try to balance it at all. Because the only way you're going to balance that is through an open process in our democracy. That's why we have a Congress. The president's ignored that.
If I was a 22-year-old guy that was not documented, I don't think I would come out of the shadows because it doesn't clear everything up. And in 2 years, who knows what will happen?
Well, ultimately, even this policy can be undone by another president. This policy expires on its own. And then what do you have? Well, unless you have a long-term solution that's responsible and balanced, you have nothing. And the way the president did this, by making this an election year ploy, by doing it the way he did it around Congress, it makes it a lot harder to deal with this issue in a permanent long-term way.
All right. News of the day, executive privilege for Fast and Furious. Do you have a reaction?
Yeah, I think it's outrageous. I think it's absolutely outrageous that they would use this on the minutes before a vote in the House, a year after the initial requests were made. I start now. I've been very, very cautious about what I say. I don't like to use language that's incendiary, but I think we're now starting to believe that there is something here they're covering up. I mean, there's certainly something in those documents they don't want us to know about. They don't want America to know about. And I think, as I said, the cover-up's usually worse than the actual, wrongdoing. And I'm afraid, without any evidence, of course, because they won't give it to us, that the White House, there's clearly things they don't want the world to know about their involvement and their statements on this issue. And I am now very, very concerned and, quite frankly, outraged that they would do what they've done.
All right. Senator Marco Rubio, the book is called An American Son. It's a great story about your family, about you, about politics. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
You bet. On the show.
Thank you.
You bet. On the show.
Thank you.
You bet.